Muffled music and light, superficial laughter echo through the room. The door opens. A person steps inside. Within the first 3 seconds, before a single word has been spoken, he already knows absolutely everything. He notices that the couple standing in the corner is positioned too far apart. Their shoulders are tense and their eyes avoid contact. He knows they just had an argument. He hears the shift in the host's tone when welcoming a new guest. That microscopic artificiality, which no one else notices, betrays a secret resentment. He sees one person constantly checking the door, clearly waiting for someone who hasn't appeared yet. This person hasn't even taken off his shoes, yet his brain has already scanned, analyzed, and classified every emotional current in the room. Others call this high emotional intelligence. Others wonder and say he can read minds. Others consider it a unique superpower of empathy. But the truth is much darker. This is not a superpower. This is not mysticism. It is a psychological and neurological phenomenon called hypervigilance. And it will soon become clear why this ability to instantly read the room is not a gift. It is a scar. It is an invisible survival mechanism that condemns a person to a constant, debilitating fatigue from which there is almost no escape. This story is an autopsy of the mind of a person who sees too much. To understand the weight of this phenomenon, it is essential to look at how a typical person's brain works compared to the brain of someone who is hypervigilant. Most people walk through the world with a natural filter. Neuroscientists call this cognitive inhibition. When an average person enters a cafe or a party, their brain blocks 99% of irrelevant information. It ignores background noise, other people's facial expressions, or body language, allowing the person to focus only on their own goal, for example, ordering coffee or finding a friend. However, in the hypervigilant brain, this filter is broken. The amygdala, the brain's threat detector, is constantly set to maximum mode. It doesn't choose what to observe. The nervous system massively and involuntarily absorbs all environmental information. He registers microscopic changes in people's faces. He notices when someone's breathing becomes slightly shallower. He tracks the direction of feet, because feet always point toward where a person truly wants to go. He feels subtle fluctuations of energy and tension in the room as clearly as if they were physical touches on his skin. This is not a conscious decision. A person does not decide, "Now I will read this room." It happens automatically, faster than logical thinking can kick in. And this leads us to the most painful question. Why would the human nervous system evolve to waste so much energy scanning the emotions of strangers? In the course of evolution, scanning for danger was meant to avoid predators. However, in the modern world, saber-toothed tigers are gone. So what is this person defending against? The answer lies in their past. In psychology, this phenomenon is directly linked to the early childhood environment. Hypervigilance is never born in a safe, calm, or predictable environment. It is born in chaos. Imagine a child growing up in a home where the atmosphere could change in a split second. It could have been a home with an emotionally unstable mother whose mood swings dictated the peace of the whole family. It could have been a home with a strict or even aggressive father whose footsteps in the hallway signaled whether the evening would be calm or dangerous. It could have been a home marked by addiction, where the child had to predict the adult's state of mind just by how the front door slammed or how the keys were placed on the table. In a safe environment, a child learns to know themselves. In such a high-tension environment, a child learns to read others. They do not have the luxury of being carefree. Their physical and emotional safety directly depends on their ability to predict a threat before it even begins. Such a child becomes an expert in human behavior not out of curiosity, but out of necessity. They learn that a barely noticeable furrow of the brow means an approaching storm. They learn that silence is sometimes more dangerous than a scream. They learn to become invisible when a space fills with anger and a peacemaker when they sense an approaching conflict. Their brain creates a brilliant, complex defense mechanism, a radar that never turns off. Years pass. The child grows up. They leave that home. They build their own life, perhaps becoming a successful, independent individual. Physically, the danger is in the past, but their nervous system still lives in that same survival state. The radar was never turned off. That is why, having stepped into a simple room at an innocent party, he still scans the environment as if it were a battlefield. His subconscious is still looking for danger. It looks for that one dissatisfied person. It looks for hidden conflict to prepare for it or avoid it. What society calls great intuition is actually a lifelong echo of post-traumatic stress. This constant scanning comes at a huge price, and that price is absolute, crushing exhaustion. Most people with this trait of hypervigilance are often considered introverts. They often cancel plans at the last minute. They like to stay home. They can be great communicators. They can even be the life of the party. But after a couple of hours in a social space, they feel as if they have run a marathon. And this makes perfect sense when looking at their cognitive load. While an average person at a party simply listens to what their interlocutor is saying, the hypervigilant individual processes thousands of data points simultaneously. He listens to words. He analyzes the tone of voice, looking for sarcasm or sadness. He observes the speaker's eye movements. At the same time, his peripheral vision tracks what is happening in a group 3 meters away. He registers the room temperature, the music, and the overall energy of the room. His processor runs at maximum speed every second. Because of this, upon returning home, such a person often sits in complete silence or darkness. He doesn't need music, he doesn't need the TV. His nervous system desperately needs a vacuum. Home to him is not just a place of rest, it is the only fortress in the world where the radar can briefly calm down because there are no more foreign emotions to analyze or control. Another painful aspect of this phenomenon is relationship asymmetry. A hypervigilant person always senses others but experiences deep isolation because he feels invisible himself. He knows exactly what his friend needs, even when they don't say it. He knows how to adapt to any person, instantly changing his behavior to meet the other's expectations. This is called the chameleon effect. However, because of this quality, he often forgets who he really is. His personality becomes only a mirror reflecting what the environment needs at that moment. He satisfies everyone else's emotional needs, smooths over conflicts, and notices even the slightest sadness in others. But when he needs help himself, he suddenly realizes the bitter reality. No one else has a radar like his. Other people do not see his suffering unless he expresses it loudly and clearly. And he doesn't know how to do that because he spent his whole life learning how to be no problem. He lives waiting for someone to read him as accurately as he reads others. Unfortunately, that expectation almost always turns into disappointment. This cognitive burden eventually begins to break the physical body. Constantly elevated levels of cortisol and adrenaline cause chronic anxiety, sleep disorders, and muscle tension in the neck and jaw area. The person loses the ability to just be. Relaxation seems dangerous to him, for if he stops watching, who will control the space? Who will protect against surprises? But breaking free from this loop is possible. Paradoxically, it starts not with an attempt to turn off one's perceptiveness. That is impossible. Breaking free starts with awareness and a radical refusal to take responsibility. When a hypervigilant person steps into a room and feels that someone in the corner is angry or sad, their old survival instinct screams, "There is tension in the room. I must do something. I must fix this." This is the voice of a small, frightened child who believes that the emotions of adults are their responsibility. The real breakthrough happens at the moment when the individual notices someone else's anger or tension and consciously says to themselves, "I see it, I feel it, but it is none of my business." This is one of the hardest psychological boundaries to draw. to allow other people to be dissatisfied, to allow other people to experience discomfort and not try to save them. To realize that in adult life, someone else's bad mood is no longer a direct threat to personal safety. The person who spent their whole life reading the room must learn to read themselves. Their attention has been directed outward for decades. They must turn it back. Instead of asking, "What do these people think of me?" they must learn to ask, "What do I think of these people?" Instead of analyzing, "How should I behave so they feel comfortable?" they must ask themselves, "Am I comfortable here?" Hypervigilance never completely disappears. A person will always notice more than others. He will always see micro-expressions, hidden intentions, and unspoken words. However, he can stop being a hostage to this information. Those who learn to master this mechanism truly turn it into a superpower. When the radar is used no longer out of fear, but out of conscious choice, it becomes an invaluable tool. Such people become exceptional negotiators, brilliant psychologists, leaders, and artists. They see human nature as it is, without any masks. But until that point is reached, it is important to understand one thing. If you recognize yourself in these words, if you are tired of seeing everything, feeling everything, and constantly scanning your environment, you must know that you are neither crazy nor too sensitive. Your brain did a perfect job. It protected you when you needed it most. It did what it had to do for you to survive. But the time for survival is over. The war you are still preparing for ended a long time ago. It is safe now. Now, finally, you can lower your weapons, close the door, and simply allow yourself to notice nothing. Because the greatest act of courage for a person used to seeing everything is allowing themselves to close their eyes.